Jeff Hansen with NutriQuest. I like very much what Jim was talking about in terms of ventilation. The one thing that surprises me, and you may know, you may have a solid answer for this. When I come out to the Midwest, we pump manure year-round in North Carolina, right, when we have an opportunity, but we really save all that stuff, and it's shocking to me in Iowa or in Minnesota when we put these deep pit barns in, and then we're surprised why PERS spikes shortly after we spread all of that around. And I just wonder how much work has been done on that, and is there, Jim, if you're still in here, are you guys changing how you handle your waste handling so that you can avoid some of those kind of events? I'm just open question.
Yeah, I think observationally, I'd say you're spot on. I don't know that we've actually looked at that from a data standpoint, and I'd be curious, any of the producers in the room, what sort of things have you done to try to mitigate that? Because, yeah, we're certainly getting into pumping season, and it's always the PERS question in the fall. Well, is it because it got cold, or is it because of the pumping? And it's probably some combination of the both, but I'd be curious if anybody has anything to share along those lines.
Yeah, I think that's a good challenge, and it's probably not shocking, the time of the year, but, Hardin County, which is a county I live in, I think 88% of the tillable acres in Hardin County are under nutrient management plan, which means they get manure. And it is a very tight window. Some of the things that we've done is really biosecurity around the application equipment, cleaning it before it gets onto the farm, inspecting it before it goes into the pit, and cleaning our driveways. The young lady from High Life, she was talking about the lime on the driveways. Great idea. We do oil our roads to try and minimize dust, but simple reality is you drive down a blacktop in Hardin County, or it's there, and so. That's probably the biggest issue, is that just the mass of density of that process, and what gets on the roads, what gets on, and then it gets back to what Daryl was talking about, then it's bio-exclusion, right? Keeping it out. But in terms of studies, I know Butch did some before, how long PERS virus survives in lagoons, I think some in deep pits as well. It's there. And so, yeah, you have to work hard on the bio-exclusion to keep it out, but not enough, Jeff. How about that?
Need more work in that area for sure. Yeah, I think that really echoes what Daryl was talking about at biocontainment. That was the thing that really impressed me about Dr. Talbot's presentation too. Is like, if we diagnose something, we just don't send those pigs to the plant, right? Now, obviously, they're an integrated system, but that's probably a novel concept, to us that sell pigs, right? And pigs are sick, but we got to get them out, right? We got to get them sold. So, all right, yep, great point, Jeff. Others? Once again, I've got the cards. I know sometimes people don't want to speak up, so if you've got thoughts, ideas, you can be jotting those down on those yellow cards again, and then just leave them on your seats, and we will go ahead and pick those up at the end. So, yeah. You want to get them?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. This is a question for Edison, and I was curious what he thought the data might look like if we did a 28-day wean age as opposed to earlier wean age.
So can you repeat, please?
Yep.
Sorry.
If we went to a 28-day wean age on those pigs in your study, what that mortality data might look like?
So if you only look for the weaning age, the lowest quartile age, which will be around 16 days, that was the only one with a higher wean to finish mortality compared to the other quartiles. But among the other three, we didn't see a statistical difference. But the major component there that was statistically higher than the others was the PERS interaction there. But yeah, just the lowest quartile was the biggest when you analyze only weaning age.
In that database, Edison, do you know what was the oldest wean age generally when you looked at the distribution of wean ages?
24, 25 days. But that will be all within the 21.5 quartile, which was the highest one.
I've got a
Hey, Steve.
question for Daryl. This biocontainment thing is intriguing, and I think about I think we got to think bigger. That was talked about in the last session. If we're going to go from 35 to cut it in half in the next 20 years to feed the world, biocontainment of filtration, outbound air in maybe nurseries where they're shedding a lot of virus. You probably can't pull enough air in finishers maybe to get through filters. Is there anybody in the equipment world thinking that way? Is there anybody that's tested the validity that we can biocontain air going out of, say, nurseries of very hot, viremic pigs, at least in the nursery stage?
Yeah.
By the way, Jimmy did a great job. So
I don't know about whether the industry's working on that. I guess can't speak to that, but I do think that potentially that's low-hanging fruit, right? Especially, if you negative pressure ventilate that barn, it's a lot easier to filter that air on the way out. Save yourself a lot of caulk that way, right? You don't have to do that, but yeah, I think potentially that may be something. Now, am I going to predict that we're all going to start filtering wean to finish barns, nursery barns? No, probably not. I'm not sure the cost benefits there, but yeah, that's it's not just aerosol too. I mean, one of the areas that we've looked at a little bit and others have looked at is when you have a farm that's breaking, a nursery or wean to market, and you deliver feed, is there an opportunity for that the inside of the truck to get contaminated, right? Because a lot of times you're ventilating air right on that feed truck or near, at least shooting in the general area there, right? And so there's a little bit of work going on in that area. Is there things that we could do to route traffic a little bit differently, or deal with those feed trucks on the way out here? But I'd say all that's pretty nascent yet, and again, it's that the focus on biocontainment hasn't been there, so we haven't done a lot of the research to see if there's things that we can do. We want to look for low-hanging fruit first. The cheap, easy things to do. Not sure filtering is the right, the first one to go to, but it might be down the road. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we can start looking at from an industry standpoint. Some of it's just simple practices, right? I see a lot of sow farms, for example, where they, their process for taking out deads at the end of the day, they may be composting even, or work shed if they're rendering. They'll, the person showers out at the end of the day. Sometimes they don't even shower out. They put on their street clothes, street shoes, and then they go out and haul the deads out and then jump in their vehicle and go home, right? Well, if they happen to live with somebody that works on a sow farm or something like that, you could see that the odds or the probability of transferring that to another's farm would be pretty good. So see a lot of that type of thing, and I think so we got a lot of work in those areas to start with, I think.
So do you want to talk just a little bit about how you use GlowGerb as an educational tool?
Okay. Yeah, I probably abuse GlowGerm actually. But yeah, we've done. I think we've done some research with it. We've looked at bench entry. We've looked at stage loading, and Chris showed some of those slides yesterday. But I think it's a really good tool. A lot of times we're looking at a specific intervention, but the thing that always strikes me is like on the stage loading, for example. Chris had that slide where that was after a market load had finished loading, and it was a picture of the chute, and it just lit up. And that happened every load, right? And you think, well, my God, how does that happen? Well, just about every load. This is the other thing that's really interesting about this. You just go out and you watch, right? And you got to be out there to conduct the study anyway. And so about every load, a driver would step across the clean, dirty line into the chute, right? Or somebody from the load crew would step into the trailer. That happened just about every time. Pigs, when they get on, they tend to lunge, and when they lunge off their back feet, right? And if they lose their footing, well, everything that's behind them gets sprayed onto the chute. Other big areas is just when they got the cutting board up there, right? You got a clean, dirty line. They may not step across it, but that cutting board they shove the pig over there with the cutting board. And so, when you look at the opportunities, and sometimes pigs get on the trailer and then come back off. That also happened about once a load. So those things are going to happen. And Jim disappeared. Is Jim still here? Yeah. He did leave. Okay. Well then, great. I can disagree with him, and he won't even know it. He made the comment that if they can't do it 100% of the time, they take it out. I completely disagree with that. I'll take something that's 50% successful if it's cheap, easy to do. Now it'd be better if it's 70%, right? But I'll take 50, right? If I can layer 2 or 3 things that are 50% effective, it's called the Swiss cheese model, right? If you can layer practices together, even though they're not all 100% effective, you got a pretty good opportunity there to create a fairly solid block, or a good solid block, right? And I look at that as in terms of robustness, right? How well does our biosecurity systems, how well is it set up to deal with those mistakes when things don't get done right? Because frankly, I don't know, I'm surprised they do anything if they expect 100%, because I've never seen anything that was 100% yet. So that I maybe disagree with him on that a little bit, and maybe I misunderstood what he meant by that. But yeah, anyway, so I think I went well beyond. You bet.
Was that Steve? Were you asking about? Yeah. So we have the electrostatic odor fences. That was part of our DNR requirement to get some sites built. But one of the byproducts of that, the amount of dust that they prevent from coming out of the end of that barn is remarkable. And then I can't remember the guy at Iowa State that collected the samples, but I'll find it. But he collected flu, and I think it may have been flu and PRRS, because I can't remember what those pigs had, and it reduced it, and it was just that simple screen. And if you guys, well, I'm not saying, they're hard to keep the electricity going to them, so the screen really worked. How about that?
Yeah, thanks, Noel.
So, Steve, funny you mentioned that, because I work with a multiplier that's 2 miles from a local abattoir, a little slaughter plant up in Minnesota, and they actually paid to filter all the air coming out of that slaughter plant. And when he wants to make express to his employees how important biosecurity is, he'll actually swap the filters out and then send them in and get a report back that shows his employees what's just literally across the field. It's pretty awesome. That's just the mentality of what he's using for biosecurity. The other thing I'd say to Daryl is one of the indirect impacts, in my opinion, is when we start stacking viruses, and we all know how bad one PRRS virus is, and then adding another one. But the other thing I would say is, thinking about dealing with PRRS for 30 years now, putting these viruses together and reassorting and creating new viruses is a big problem. And then we might even throw a vaccine virus in on top of it. So that's also another direct impact, is when we really get a bunch of viruses in the same pool.
Yep, absolutely.